Hello and what is up? It's your boy Real_Joshua here with something that a lot of people have been requesting, and that is a guide on how to beat Rob Lucci, one of the scariest opponents to face in OP07. Before we get started here, I want to make a couple quick announcements. First off, thanks to everyone who's supported the channel. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe if you like the videos. It really helps me out. Another thing that helps out is if you click that TCG player link, if you're looking to buy cards, use that link and it'll help me out. And finally, if anybody has ideas for content, if there's anything you want to see, let me know and I will look to create that. That's where this came from. And so let's get right into it. Lucci, people have been asking about this for a while, and the reason why I've avoided creating this is because I honestly don't really know how to beat Lucci, or at least I didn't before I started doing research for this. And what I have found is, in a lot of cases, people will say, you know, just hope they don't see stage, hope they don't see Moria. And that is true, right? But we also have to try to play the game ourselves and not just hope that they don't have it. And to that end, I found a lot less constructive, actionable insight. And so in creating this guide, I'm hoping to provide some of that. I do not go into matchups in this guide specifically. Instead, what I'm trying to provide is more overarching information about what you should do when you face a Rob Lucci, what you should look out for, how you need to prepare for his late game. And that will help you to think more critically about what do I need to do with my bodies that I have on the board and the swings that I have and the resources available to me. And I found out some really interesting things. First off, what does Lucci do? Rob Lucci is a 5-life black leader whose effect is when attacking, you may trash the top 2 cards of your deck. Give up to one of your opponent's characters -1 cost for this turn. It's really good for him because it allows him to mill the top 2 cards of his deck, so those go immediately into the trash. But because you have stuff that can pull other things out of your trash, it's good for you. You also have cards that are powered up by having more cards in your trash, so by putting more cards in the trash, Lucci becomes stronger, essentially. On top of that, he gets to give -1 to an opponent's character, which will help him to overcome a lot of cost thresholds, allowing him to remove stuff from the board. The strengths of Rob Lucci. First off, the removal in this deck is absolutely ridiculous. Some would say it's even crazier than Sakazuki, but yeah, not just removal. On top of that, you're gonna be establishing big bodies on the board. If you're coming against a Rob Lucci, be ready to fight for your life once he hits that 8 dawn mark, because he's gonna be bringing stuff back and clearing your board almost every turn, and you're just gonna have to do your best. Next, the deck plays from trash. As we discussed earlier, the leader effect allows you to trash 2 cards from the top of your deck. So that means that he knows what's in his trash and what he's able to put in there from his hand using counter. So his options for playing things are not restricted to just what is in his hand. You know, when we have stuff, if I use something for counter in my normal deck, I cannot use that card again. But Lucci, that just becomes part of his library that he can then use throughout the rest of the game. So the options that this deck has are just kind of off the charts. Next, the deck has access to Moria. It's one of the craziest cards in the game. I think it's the strongest card in the game, and in this deck it does absolutely disgusting things. Finally, it cycles through the deck with the ability to bottom deck things from trash, which means some cards allow you to put cards from the trash on the bottom of your deck as like a cost to play that card. It allows this deck to outgrind almost anything via recursion because they can just put resources back on the bottom of their deck and they can just redraw those things and know what they're going to have. The weaknesses of this deck, and there are a couple. These are just slight vulnerabilities that Lucci has, I would say. First off, you can see their trash. As the opponent, you can see what they have in there. So you can see if they have a Lucci, which is a very important card in this deck, the 4-cost Lucci. If it's not in their trash, the plays that they have access to are much reduced, and then you can play around some of those things. So for instance, if you notice that they have no Luccis in the trash, you might want to, if you see a Lucci get played on the board, bottom deck that, because then when you take it off the board, it won't go back into the trash, etc., etc. The deck doesn't hold up very well to aggression because a lot of this deck's ability to remove is based on combos and being able to reduce something and then play something to KO it. They're going to be needing to use a lot of cards from hand to take your stuff off the board or to execute on their game plan. A lot of this stuff does come for free for them, but it is worth noting that they need to have multiple ingredients to pull off their combos in a lot of cases, and they have to do a lot of setup. So if you're just swinging at them, a lot of the times they're going to have to take those swings because they need what they need to set up, and they can't use it for counter, because if they give it up for counter, then they won't be able to do what they need to do to set up their later turns. Granted, sometimes they will just counter out of it because what they have in hand is too good and they can just get rid of stuff indiscriminately and they can just look to bring that back later. But if you do swing early, you can put them in a spot where it's difficult for them to make late game plays. The deck is, quote, inconsistent. A lot of the players who play this deck feel like it is inconsistent, and a big reason for that is because when you're milling stuff, you don't get to decide what you're milling. Milling being, of course, trashing cards from your deck. And sometimes they'll trash the top 2 cards of their deck, and it's a Moria and a Stage, which is a very important card that we'll discuss in a bit. But also, the deck lacks finishers. Since it runs no rushers, you pretty much always know exactly how much damage they're going to be able to do to you in a single turn, and that helps you to plan to get in position for your final pushes. So you pretty much know what they're going to be able to do to you on a given turn, and you pretty much always know how much damage they're going to be able to do to you. And because of that, you can do quite a bit more to think about what they have and what you have, and to try your best to play around that. So I think that's a part of this matchup that I didn't do enough thinking about before. I kind of like played on autopilot and just like put stuff on board and hope they couldn't remove it all. But really, if you do a bit more thinking about it, you can really extract the most out of this matchup as possible. But again, you really have to do some big brain stuff to get through this relatively unscathed. Okay, let's talk about Lucci's base game plan. It's pretty simple. Really what they're trying to do, first they're playing their stage. Next, they want to stack up their trash by attacking you every turn and just trashing the top 2 cards of their deck. And then they also use cards that allow them to draw cards and then trash cards from their hand, so that then they can stack their trash with good stuff. Next, they remove everything that you play using their reducers and their KO cards. They play the big combo on the 8 Dawn turn, which is Moria into Rebecca, into Helmeppo, into Spandine, into Lucci, which I will talk about a bit later. And then they just keep putting on the pressure that way, removing your stuff, and then they win. That's how this deck works. Here's how we try to beat that deck. First off, we need to prioritize our own pressure over Lucci's pressure. Lucci doesn't need to rush you down. They feel no pressure to rush you down. They're going to be swinging at you like every turn, but it's not because they're trying to rush you down. It's because they want to mill the top cards of their deck, so they're just swinging. And yeah, he's always going to win if the game goes later. They always feel confident that they're going to be able to win the later the game goes. And a lot of times they will. Just like it's very hard to outplay Morias unless you have Morias and Sabos. Another way to know how to win against this deck is to know what he's capable of doing, which we will talk about very soon. Look at his trash. Next, prepare for the possibilities and play around them however you can. We're going to talk about all these in more depth, but next, protect your board. Okay, this is your main tool, is your board. As much as you can protect it, you need to. And then at the very end, if all else fails, make him have it. A lot of time, you just got to go for it. You just got to swing and hope the Lucci doesn't have what he needs. And a lot of times he won't. So pay attention to their counters, pay attention to what's on the board, pay attention to what's in their trash. Try to get a sense for how much 2K they have. Every once in a while, swing for 6K to try to get 2Ks out of their hand. All these things are really going to help you in the long run. Here is one of the deck lists. I think this is a pretty nice archetype for this deck. Not every version of this is going to be running these cards, but this is a good representation of what you might see in a Lucci deck, even though some of them are not as popular. This, for the record, came in second place at the recent Latin America TCG Online Treasure Cup. It was from Angel Ovalle. A lot of this is pretty normal, pretty core, except that Stussy is often not run these days. And then Kaku is often not run these days. Sometimes people will play an Isho, but this is pretty much what you're going to be expecting. If you know what these cards are, good. If not, we're going to talk about them right now. Okay, let's go over the cards. I'm going to go over these really quickly though, because we're going to be talking about what they can do in conjunction a bit later, and I think that's a bit more important, okay? First, we have Brook. It reduces by 1 and KOs a cost 0 character. Lucci, the bread and butter, removes a cost 2 character and a cost 1 character from the board. Obviously, that doesn't sound that good, but you can reduce a lot of cards by a ton, and that allows you to remove stuff pretty easily using this card. So it removes 2 bodies, let's put it that way. Shigun, finger gun, allows them to remove 1 cost 5 or less character. This is basically enabling them to reduce your higher cost characters from the board for little or no cost at all. In fact, it lets them stack their trash better. Next, we have Sabo, KO a 5 and 3 cost character by trashing 1 card from your hand. Next, we have Brook that KOs a cost 4 or less character. Sorry, it doesn't KO, it trashes the character, which is important because it means it can get past KO resistant effects like Sabo's. Kaku, which can KO a cost 3 or less character. Next, we have our reducers. Tempest Kick. If they have 10 cards in trash, it's a -3 reducer. Helmeppo is also a -3 reducer attached to a 3k body for 2 Dawn. Then we have Ennis Lobby, the best reducer in the deck. It can be used every turn just for a 2 Dawn investment. It can be played on 2 Dawn, giving you -2 Dawn to characters every turn. It gives them built-in -3 cost to characters with this plus leader effect in conjunction, which is insane. Next, we have other reduction, Khalifa -2. It's also a Miller. Then we have Tsuru, which is -2 cost. It's a 2k. Khalifa also 2k. And then we have, of course, the leader ability -1 cost. Now we have our Millers. Sabo makes your board immune to KO, but it also lets you draw 2 and trash 2, which is good for you because you want to trash stuff. Spandam is a searcher, lets you pick 1 CP card and trash the other 2. If there is no CP, you just trash all 3. Khalifa is a draw 2, trash 2 as well. Value generation. These are cards that pull stuff out of the trash for us to play other cards. Rebecca can be used in conjunction with Spandine. Spandine can then bring out a 4-cost Lucci, which is crazy. So you could, if you play a Rebecca, you could play a Spandine. You could then play a Lucci. So it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 Dawn worth of stuff with just 4 Dawn. What's even grosser is that can be stacked with the best card in the game, Gecko Moria, to play Rebecca plus Spandine plus Lucci plus a whatever 2-drop or 1-drop that you want. Usually either Spandine or Spandam. Or Helmeppo. Sorry. Spandam or Helmeppo. Early removal. Ennis Lobby. This card is insane. If this is on the board, 2 Dawn, be careful when you play stuff on the board. Just expect it to get removed, and maybe consider saving those characters until you can play multiple things on board, because you can then use that character instead of just tossing it into the void. You can use it as counter in the future to protect other characters on your board from being swung at. Next, there's Brook, single target removal. This is basically one of the biggest removal targets for you. You want to get rid of this thing because the longer it stays on the board, the more it's going to punish you. It's going to remove more stuff for free and very easily. Then there's Lucci. They're bread and butter. It takes out 2 bodies. Not typically played in the early game since it only works well with stage and it sacrifices stuff in the trash. Oh, also regarding Brook, they probably won't play this out that early unless they have access to stage already. So you should mostly be worried about this if they have a stage in play. But if they do, just again, you're throwing your stuff into the void. Then there's Shigun, aka Finger Gun. It removes a 5-cost or less character. They're going to use this against your 5-cost characters because it also helps them set out their trash. It trashes the top 2 cards of the deck, and it's really good. So after you've thought about their early game removal, you've played some stuff on board, let's say you're a blue deck, you got your Jinbei and like a crocodile on board, and then they killed one of them using a Shigun. Now is the part where you need to take a second, take a deep breath, and really start to think, okay? And the reason for that is when the early game has wrapped up, the most important part of the game is coming, and that is the 8-9 Dawn turn. When you hit the mid game, take your time, okay? I don't care how fast the opponent is playing, just sit back, take inventory of everything that's going on in the game, because this is the moment where you, in a lot of cases, this is where you win or lose the game against Lucci. So before they hit 8 Dawn, before they hit 9 Dawn, you need to ask, okay, how am I going to put the most pressure on the opponent by reducing their hand or reducing their life or both, and getting my characters to stick as well as I possibly can, considering their board and trash state. This is hard to describe until we start talking about what they are able to do to you. And I think the big takeaway from this video is going to be you understanding what they are capable of doing to you and how you will play around that, okay? So by now that we know the deck, now that we know what can you do in the early turns, let's talk about the biggest swing turn that it has and how we play around that. Starting with 8 Dawn play number 1, which is the big bad of this deck, Gecko Moria. Here's what Gecko Moria can do. Okay, let's break this down. It can remove 9 Dawn worth of bodies across 2 characters while developing a 9k, a 6k Lucci, a 0k blocker, and a 3k body. And also it can also bring out a 2k body. So it could fill the entire board. Moria plays these 2. Rebecca plays this one. Spanding plays this one. Okay? It can remove 9 Dawn worth of stuff. So just keep that in mind. For 8 Dawn, it will remove 9 Dawn worth of your stuff. That's a 5 cost character and a 4 cost character, or a 6 cost character and a 3 cost character. Expect those to be done for, okay? Kaput. If the opponent doesn't have stage, this is 7 Dawn worth of bodies, which is a 4 cost and a 3 cost, or a 5 cost and a 2 cost. You get the idea. So we can already see how much weaker this is without the stage. But yeah, just look forward to this on turn 8. Just know that in order for them to do this, they need to have 6 cards in trash to do the Spandine Lucci combo. So sometimes they can't do that, but they can also just do, from the Moria, they can just do Lucci plus Helmeppo. A lot of times Helmeppo will be a Spandine instead, because that allows them to just draw another card from their deck and trash more. So just, yeah, I think what's more important to note is that they can remove 9 Dawn worth of stuff if they have stage. Memorize this, commit it to memory. This is what they can do to you on 8 Dawn. They can also do Sabo. Sabo can remove 11 Dawn worth of bodies across 2 characters while developing a 9k, which is a lot less than what the Moria is able to develop, obviously. It's like 4 more bodies less. It can only remove 9 Dawn worth of stuff without the stage. But yeah, Sabo KOs a 5 cost and a 3 cost, so once you add stage plus leader ability, it becomes 11 Dawn worth of stuff. Okay, let's say the opponent is a Moria that has an 8 cost Moria and a 3 cost Hina on the board. The way that a Sabo would remove this is that they do -1 with the leader effect to the Moria, -2 with the stage, which makes it a 5 cost, and then the Sabo can just remove that because it's a 5 cost and a 3 cost. So they get a 9k, you lose your 8 cost and 3 cost. The next play we have is Lucci plus Shigan. And when I say Lucci in a lot of these cases, they can play Lucci just raw onto the board, but they can also just play Rebecca plus Spandine plus Lucci. Of course, they need to have more stuff in their trash for this, but when I say this is always like the max amount that they can do to you, so just expect that this is a possibility, okay? So like, let's say they don't have Moria in hand, but they have like Rebecca plus Shigan. They can do this. They can remove 11 Dawn worth of bodies across 3 characters, which is the same amount of Dawn cost, by the way, as Sabo can get rid of, but they can develop a 6k, a 0k blocker, and a 2k body. What's notable about this play is that they can get rid of 3 characters, which is 2 with the Lucci, and then 1 with the finger gun. Okay, so just, you gotta be careful for that. They can only remove, so sorry, this should say 9 Dawn worth of bodies removed without the stage. Just note that it requires 6 cards in trash to do the Spanding Lucci combo, but just 3 with the Lucci. So they could just play Shigan plus Rob Lucci, and that's totally something they can do to you. So just be prepared for that. They'll just develop less. What have we learned from talking about these thresholds? First off, when it's their 8 Dawn turn, the most that they can do as far as removal is remove 11 Dawn worth of characters with the stage, or 9 Dawn worth of characters without the stage, which is 11 Dawn, for the record, is 6 cost and 5 cost. It's 4 cost and 7 cost, or 3 cost and 8 cost. Without stage, that would be like 4 and 5 cost, 4 cost and a 5 cost, 3 cost and 6 cost, 2 cost and 7 cost. If they're trying to apply big pressure to you, which is to play a Moria and a Lucci, they need to have all that stuff in their trash. So if you look in their trash and they don't have a Lucci, they don't have Spandine, the max pressure that they would be able to apply is with Moria plus Lucci, which gives 2 big attackers on board. They can remove at max 9 Dong worth of characters with their stage, which again is 4 plus 5, or 3 plus 6. And then they can remove 7 Dong worth of characters without the stage. So, what does that mean? Surpassing the above cost breakpoints can disincentivize a high pressure Moria play, buying you more time and giving you more chances to apply pressure. So if you have 12 Dawn worth of stuff on the board, you'd pretty much know they're not going to be able to remove all of it. Okay, or if you have that split across 3 different things and it's more than 11 Dawn because they have the access to the Lucci plus Shigon combo. But if they're doing a Lucci plus Shigon combo, it's like not that bad what they're playing on the board compared to something like a Moria. But if you are able to get more than 9 Dawn worth of characters on the board, if they have a stage up, more than 7 Dawn worth of characters on the board if they don't have stage up, and even better if you have that split over 3 or 4 bodies on the board, they're not going to be able to get rid of it all. So then you can use that to keep swinging and keep going, keep putting your foot on the gas. It's this pressure that makes it harder for them to play things. Okay, now let's talk about the 9 Dawn plays that they have access to. At 9 Dawn, they just have all the same plays, but they become stronger because they get access to Tempest Kick. Keep in mind, they have to have 10 cards in trash for this to work. So if they don't have 10 cards in trash, they can't do this stuff. They have Lucci plus Finger Pistol plus Tempest Kick. That we talked about that before, but without the Tempest Kick, this will be able to remove 14 Dawn worth of bodies across 3 characters, developing a 6k, 3k, and 0k blocker if they bring out the Lucci from a Rebecca. That's 12 Dawn worth of stuff without the stage. Sabo, they can Sabo plus Tempest Kick, removing 14 Dawn worth of characters across 2 bodies while developing a 9k. Moria plus Tempest Kick removes 12 Dawn worth of bodies across 2 characters, or 10 Dawn without the stage. So yeah, these thresholds become higher when they have access to 9 Dawn or more. At 10 Dawn, this is hell for you, okay? They can do whatever they put their mind to. Almost anything you play can get removed, with the limit that they can pretty much still only get rid of 2 or 3 things at a time, but 3 is not that hard for them, but they can do it. Just keep an eye out on their trash and know what they need. Lucci plus Finger Pistol plus Tempest Kick plus Tempest Kick removes 17 Dawn worth of bodies across 3 characters, developing a 6k, 3k, and 0k blocker if they use the Rebecca. 15 Dawn without the stage. So 17 Dawn becomes the breakpoint here, which is nuts. And 3 characters max. And they don't just have access to Lucci plus Finger Pistol, they also get Lucci plus Kaku plus Tempest Kick, because that's 9 Dawn for the Kaku 5k if they run that, and then Tempest Kick. So these thresholds all just go up by 3, which is crazy. And even if you have Sabos, you're not really necessarily safe because they can brook those Sabos. So how do we play around this stuff? Well, there's 3 ways that we can play around Lucci and what they are doing to you. The first way is to stack the board and protect it. Remember, Lucci can remove up to 3 things in a turn, but that doesn't come online until late game. So if in the early game if you're playing blue, you can play a Jinbei and bring out something else. You can play another Jinbei and bring out something else. You can play stuff that's putting stuff on board, or you can just optimally use your Dawn to, if you have 7 Dawn, you can play a 4 cost plus a 3 cost, and just keep on putting stuff on the board, okay? You should also ideally use your leader to swing at their face early. You can do this because a lot of the times they'll take that first damage easy peasy. They have 5 health. They're not going to get rid of a card in hand just to deal with 1 swing. So you could pretty much just swing for 5 early, and then it'll be easily taken from them. You might even be able to get another swing in, you know, for 6k or 1k. 6k or 0k, and sometimes they'll take that second hit just for free from your leader while using that Dawn just to play stuff on board. Next, remember that a higher cost board is going to be harder for the Lucci to remove, and cheating out bodies is really strong. So this does apply to multi-targets, you know, so if you're playing Jinbei, that's 8 Dawn worth of stuff. You've already passed the stage limit of Moria. So Lucci will not be able to just like raw KO your stuff. Right, they can take out 9 Dawn worth of stuff with stage, 7 Dawn without stage. So if you have a Jinbei plus something else, plus another 4-drop, they can't take that out. So now that we know that breakpoint, we know how we could get a body to stick if they don't have stage on the board. If they do have stage, then, you know, yeah, they can remove that card, right? But if you have like a Boa, that's a 6 cost card on the board, and then if you have a Jinbei plus a Crocodile, that's 6 plus 4 plus 4, which is 14 Dawn worth of stuff on the board, which, as we know, is quite a bit harder for them to remove. Even if they do remove 2 of your bodies, you also have 1 left on the board. Another way to stack the board and protect it is just to play cards that don't die, like Sabo, which can protect your board. You have Basil Hawkins, the green Bonnie card that instead of getting removed from the board will rest one of your opponent's characters. And then there's also Rush Enel, which if it would be removed from the board, it's a 7 cost 7k. If it would be removed from the board, you may trash one of your life cards in the top card of your life instead. It's a once per turn effect, but can be very good against this deck. Second, mind your swings. And this one is really important, okay? And mind Lucci swings too, because first off, we know that Lucci is pretty much always going to swing in order to trash stuff from the top of their deck. Obviously, it's like really scary because you're like, well, I have to just trash a card every time that he does this. No, you don't. You can just take it and you can use that later to protect your board, okay? Or you can use it to protect yourself. But usually you want to use it to protect your board because you do not want your characters to be dying in battle against other characters. You need them all to just die from effects, and you want to be able to protect them with counter as much as possible when Lucci is attacking at them. Next, don't be afraid to 6k block if the Lucci only has leader swing. If they only have leader swing on board, they can't play something else that's going to attack you, okay? They might have like a small body on board, which they might then use to attack your thing. But usually, if they're going to dedicate their Dawn to that, that's actually better for you because they're not using that Dawn to remove your card while developing a body. You know what I'm saying? So if you have a 6k blocker on board, your Lucci swings at a 5k that you have rested or something, just block. Don't worry about it too much. They're just bluffing. They don't have rushers. Remember that. Next, use your leader to whittle away at the Lucci's life or remove characters that pose a long-term threat if you have no other removal options. So if, for instance, they played a Brook and that managed to attack, which that's already bad if the Brook has managed to attack, but you might want to dedicate a leader swing to that. If you know that you can remove a body from the board, it's nice to alleviate the pressure that they're putting on you long term so that you can continue to apply your own. Just be careful not to waste too many of your swings trying to remove their characters on board, unless you know you're going to be able to get a lot of stuff out of their hand. So just make sure that whenever you swing, you're getting the most that you possibly can out of the Lucci, and that you're not just like giving them stuff and to take into their hand. Next, check his resources. As we know, we always know what's in their trash. That's an advantage for us. We always know if he has the stage or not. So if you see a stage, play differently than if he doesn't. Okay, we know, we've already talked about this. We know the breakpoints, and that will help you massively toward that end. Second, know that if he has no Lucci in trash, his play lines go down massively, significantly. So look in that trash, look for Lucci's. If there's not one in there, know that they have to like spend time to set that up first, and that their Moria is going to be a lot less effective. Although I will say there are opponents who will just raw play a Moria because that's going to get them a lot of big bodies out of the trash and put pressure on you. So they might not be removing your board, but they can put a lot of stuff on their board so they can put pressure on you so they can win. Next, be ready for them to spam blockers late in the game. They have Rebecca's. they're going to be able to remove your stuff with them. They have sabos that they can then use to shield up even more. Just expect that stuff and be ready for it. They're not applying pressure to you with it per se, which is kind of nice. They're just using it to defend themselves, but just know that it is coming, and don't ever really think that you're always going to be able to just swing at face for free, because a lot of times they're going to have blockers. Next, understand that a smaller trash size means lower possibilities for them. Those Tempest kicks do not subtract cost until that trash is at 10 or more. And then finally, this applies a lot to blue too. Don't try to outgrind the Morias, okay? Enel can withstand a few turns from it, but just understand that like once they start playing Moria on the board, you are on a clock. And the game becomes very, very dangerous, because no matter what you play, like they're just going to be slowly clawing their way back into the game using the most OP card in the game, okay? And they will develop that advantage. And even if you were able to take it all out, they could just put it from their trash to the bottom of their deck, keep cycling, keep trashing stuff, get closer and closer to those Morias again, and it just gets ugly. You gotta apply pressure. Okay, so that does it for the initial explanation. Let's get into some games, and I will talk about the decisions that I make in those games, and hopefully teach a bit more about the specific matchups that you might face as Lucci. Okay, so I know I usually do these live, but I wanted to just show the replay because I feel like I'm better at talking through the turns and we can go through this a little bit faster. So I'm looking to swarm the board. So I want cards that are going to give me some ramp early, but with the potential to kind of remove stuff and continue to generate value. I don't like that in this opening hand I'm not seeing any draw cards, so I decide not to keep it. Here, not much better, but I do have ramp in the form of Ein plus Beppo. So he plays a Spandam, and then I instantly look in his trash, as you will notice. He trashes a Brook and a Spandine, so I know that there's a Brook in his trash. Also notably, he has not played an Ennie's Lobby on this turn, so the amount of pressure on me right now is not too heavy. Right here I don't have many plays, but I figure I could probably start getting a body on the board if I play out Shariah, which is kind of what I was considering. Should I play Shariah or should I swing for 8? I decide I'm going to play Shariah because I can start developing bodies on the board. They end up countering using a Brook. The Brook is probably not very useful for them here because they can't remove the Shariah perhaps. I haven't played the Shariah though, so I'm assuming that because they trashed the Brook, they either have another Brook in hand or they do not have the Ennie's Lobby stage, which is a good sign for me. Because I have no cards to draw, I decide to take this. It gives me another Shariah, which is like kind of meh. They decide to use a Rob Lucci here, which is going to be costly for them because they have to sacrifice cards in their trash to use this play. And I feel like they just can't really do much in the way of removal against me soon. I did look at their trash, so they got rid of one Brook and a Khalifa. So those are at the deck bottom, and now they only have 3 cards in their trash. So here I'm starting to decide what to do. I want to be able to ramp as much as possible, put pressure on as much as possible, but I don't have any minus 3k reducers. So far this game, I have not drawn any 3k reducers in the form of Gordon or Raise Max, and I haven't drawn any draw cards. So everything that I do is playing around that while trying to look at what they are capable of doing to me and what I can take and what I can't take. So here I'm trying to create as much value as possible so I don't get starved out of resources, while keeping my Dawn as high as possible and putting pressure on them if possible. So here I play a Captain Kidd, use my Dawn minus effect to bring out a Beppo. So I bring out an Ein here, and the reason for that is because Beppo has 1k counter, which I can then use to protect my board. I attach 1 to lead and swing for 6 because I feel like he's more likely to take that than a 5. So here with this play, I was able to get rid of the Spandam, which is a body that could swing at me later. I develop a Captain Kidd and an Ein, which is 9 cost worth of cards, going into their 6 Dawn turn, which is very good. They could probably only get rid of 1 of those max. And then I attack for 6 and take a life, while still having resources to protect my board. Here they're swinging for 6, and I decide to take that because I am low on cards to refresh my hand, and because I don't want to just be discarding stuff willy-nilly from my hand. Here he swings for 6k, and I decide to do the same thing, which, interesting, right? Because I have 2Ks that I could use, but I'm deciding that going into their 8 Dawn turn, if they have a Moria, that's gonna be, not very good for me. And on top of that, I want to be able to protect my board from any swings. Because I have no reducers in hand, I cannot just get rid of their board however I want. So I need to be able to have tools that will allow me to fight back on board and to protect my own board. And keeping these 2Ks is going to help me out with that. They play a Kaku and kill my Ein, but I still have my Captain Kid, which is really good. The problem is they have 2 6Ks on board, and I have no -3 reducers. I decide to play Miss All Sunday, hoping that I will draw 1 Gordon here or something, and I do not draw a Gordon. So it's a difficult spot for me, so I'm trying to figure out how can I get the most value out of the opponent here in this situation. So what I decide to do is I decide to play Otama. I bring this down, the Lucci down to a 4K. I then Dawn -3, bring out an Ein, again so that I could keep the Beppo's counter. And then I get 6K to swing at 4K. They'll have to get rid of 2 cards if they want to protect this Lucci. And they let it go. I would have been in a tough spot if they protected that, because I would have had to swing with my Captain Kid, which would have been sketchy because they have obviously the Lucci swing plus Kaku swing. And I would have had to take one and try to counter out of the other. But if that was the case on their 8 Dawn turn, then they weren't playing a Moria because they would have to be attacking using 2 of their things. And then I would have 3 bodies on board that could swing back, one of which generates more Dawn, etc., etc. So I would be in a dangerous position for sure, but I felt confident that I had the means to counter out. So they swing for 5 here, and I immediately block because I basically know that they're going to try to remove my Captain Kid right now anyway, so I might as well get some use out of it. So they do have a Kaku swing here for 7K, and this one I do decide to counter out of because I have refill in my hand. They play a Sabo, trash a Moria, and a Borsellino, so I'm assuming they probably have another Moria in their hand if they're trashing one of them. They probably just don't feel like they need to. They're probably saving a lot of counter, and they're probably going to play a Moria on me next turn. So I'm like, okay, how am I going to deal with this, right? I can't really pressure them right now because I'm just going to be giving them cards. They're going to take as much damage as they want, and it'll actually be helpful to them because there could be counter in there, and it's going to become harder for me to take stuff off their board. And if that happens, then they're just going to be able to swing at me as much as they want because they could protect their board after the fact. So I have to start going for their board here, especially knowing that there's a Moria coming next turn. The only problem is I have no reducers. I've only seen 1 reducer this entire game, even though I'm running 8. Actually 11 if you count the 3 Otamas. I've seen 1 Otama. I'm running 8 3K reducers. So here I decide, okay, so instead of going for face, which he will probably take and gain more resources, I'm going to go for the Kaku. Swinging 8K at it, he takes the damage to the Kaku, which I'm totally fine with. I swing for 6K so that I incentivize them to... I was trying to bait a block with Sabo into a 1K counter so that I could then swing at the Sabo because, again, I'm trying to remove bodies from the board. And here I play a Reiju raw so that I could draw cards. So I could potentially have a blocker to play out on the board using my leader effect. Note that if I had used my leader effect there and brought out the Reiju, I would have had these reducers, but then I wouldn't have had leader effect up, so it wouldn't have been useful. So it's kind of funny that I then draw these 2 reducers, which I've needed the entire game now, when it's a little bit late, but that's how law goes sometime. So I use my leader effect here. I don't bottom deck anything, obviously. I decide not to bring out an Ein, and instead I bring out a Kid and Killer because I can put a little bit of pressure on their life. I could put pressure on something immediately, right? So if he does not block this, he goes down to 3 life, which is good because I have a lot of bodies on the board and they cannot remove them here. If they decide to block, that's also good. So they do decide to block a 5k with a 6k. For him, it's free. But this allows me to then put 1 Dawn on my Law and attack the Sabo, which he's much more inclined to protect. If I had swung 6k at face, in that case, it probably wouldn't have been good because they could just take that life and they probably would like to have an extra counter in hand. So they counter out of that. They discard a Rebecca, which is pretty good for us, although Moria could always bring that back. But if you'll notice, yeah, now I'm in a position where I have a lot of stuff on the board. They cannot remove it all. We know that they cannot remove it all. And I can protect some of it using my 2k counter that I have from hand. And the reason that I have been able to keep this in hand is because I've been holding on to a lot of it for pretty much the entire game. So that, like that Beppo, for instance, I keep playing Eins, even though I might have gotten more Dawn value out of the Beppo. I kept playing Eins because they had no counter and I could use the Beppo for counter. I say, okay, I'm gonna actually block with Kid again because they could probably remove the Kid and they're reducing it using leader effect. So that's probably gonna happen anyway. Here, I literally cannot counter out of that. So I take it. It's another Reiju. And they play Gecko Moria as expected. Gecko Moria into Rebecca. The Rebecca doesn't end up playing anything out, which is interesting, which gives me an entire board worth of bodies and is not very good for them. But I'm assuming they just didn't have really anything else to play from trash. So here I start thinking, okay, I cannot kill this turn. So the best chance for me, and I drew a Sanji, is to get blockers on the board and to remove their board. So I decide to swing for 8 at the Sabo, which I pretty much know is going to get countered. Then I think to myself, okay, I can either swing for 8. I really want to get rid of this Sabo because I have 2 reducers. That means I can get rid of Gecko Moria. I could swing at the Sabo for 8. They would have to discard a 2k and a 1k. Alternately, I could swing for 666, which would require them to discard 3 cards from hand to defend this, which would leave them at 2 cards in hand, which they don't really want to do. And if they do, then at the very least, I've gotten stuff out of their hand. Okay, so I swing for 6. They counter out. I swing for 6. They counter out. I swing for 6. They do not counter out. So that means they probably don't have any more counter in hand, or it's a card that they need in order to carry out a combo. Now I'm in a position where their board is pretty much clear. I can deploy my Gordon, -3 to the Moria. Gordon, -3 to Moria. Leader effect, bottom deck the Moria, and then I bring out a Sanji to protect myself. I can attack for 6k. And then here I make what I now deem is probably a mistake, but it could have also won me the game. Would love people's input on whether they think this is strictly a mistake. I think it might be. But I decide to attack their leader with this Captain Kid. The thing is, this gets punished by a Shigan. It does not get punished by Shigan plus leader effect, because if they want to use leader effect, they have to attack something, in which case their attack is totally impotent anyway, and it doesn't matter. But if they had Shigan plus like a stage, or Shigan plus a Khalifa, which they trashed, Shigan plus a Tsuru, they would be able to do that. Shigan plus Tsuru, Shigan plus Khalifa, whatever, and remove the Sanji and dedicate the rest of their Dawn to the Lucci and swing face. So that would be an instant loss if they had exactly a reducer plus Shigan, because I only have 3k counter in hand. If I had more counter in hand, it might have been better. But also the odds of having exactly those cards is not the best. Okay, so they swing at leader. Obviously, I'm going to not take that. And I know that I can just block this and counter because they're not going to have something else to rush me down. So they do have lobby. And if they had Shigan, again, the game would pretty much be over right now. Spending brings out a Rebecca. Draw 2, trash 2. They Lucci. And that's only going to get rid of one of my cards. So again, they would be at 4 life here, which would put me in a bit more of a difficult position, but not unwinnable. So here I decide to push for lethal. I swing for 6 because they need a 2k to counter out of this. And if they discard a 2k, that's good for me because they've given up a 2k in this situation. I could swing for 5k, get a hit, swing for 7k, get another hit, and then the victory is guaranteed. And then I swing for 7k because they would have to discard 2 of their cards. I swing for 9k and they just give it up here. They had a 2k Kaku in hand but decided not to use it. But yeah, they were in a position where I think from here, pretty much any swings that I do are going to get through and win for us. So as you can see, using the resources available to me, which was not the best when they were playing 6k cards, I did my best to hold on to as many resources as I could and ensure that I wasn't getting starved out of resources and I had as many options as possible to win me the game ultimately. Now as Enel, I'm looking for my late game as well as Gidatsu, which we end up getting. This is actually a very good opening hand, I want to say. Shirahoshi is basically a free block that's going to get us another life. Unless it gets brooked, but it's whatever. So I decided to start swinging early here. And the reason is mostly with my Gidatsu, I'm going to be trying to remove a 4-cost character. A lot of these Luccis don't run Kakus. So I just want to be able to get rid of a character, and Gidatsu I think will still be good if they have 4 life. I swing and they counter out, which is even better for me because I'm getting cards out of their hand. And then I play a Shirahoshi, which is going to get value at some point. Sometimes the opponent just forgets that it's even there. They play a Rebecca here to get a Kaku from their trash. They are kind of assuming that I'm going to play aggro and they don't want to take that much damage early. Here I get a Luffy, which could kill the Rebecca, but I decide not to use it. On this turn, I have 5 Dawn. I could take out the Rebecca here, but next turn is going to be my 7 Dawn turn, and I won't have anything to do if I play this Gidatsu now. I could maybe play my Luffy, but if they don't attack my face, then that's not really going to do much because it only works when I have 2 life remaining. So I decide that in this position, I want to get rid of the Rebecca. So the best way for me to do that is to put some pressure on their life and do something that they simply cannot take. So I play the Onami and swing for 8. They probably don't want to counter out of that. They have a Rebecca, they use it, it's gone. So that gives me the ability to swing later. It adds less protection on their board so that I can swing at their bodies. And it gives me the option to play Gidatsu on the following turn while continuing to swing face. So they swing for 7. I'm going to take that as an L. You're pretty much always fine with taking damage. Okay, so they kill my Shirahoshi, which gives me another life. That's going to be good for me because it makes my Yamato stronger. Notably, our Gidatsu is still online here. I was thinking that I should maybe play the Gidatsu before attacking face, but I decide that instead I'm going to attack face. And the reason for that is so that they don't know what my next play is going to be. They counter out. I play my Gidatsu. I have a 6k on board. They have 5k swing, and I have Yamato come in alive next turn. In addition to Katakuri. They -2 the Gidatsu and they remove it with a Kaku. Swinging 7k over 5k, which I take, and I get an Enel off that, which, as we discussed, Enel's a very good card into this matchup, and you will see why. I could use a Yamato, but I know that I'm not going to be getting full value out of it because it's not going to be healing me for a life, and I would really like to be able to use that heal more effectively. Plus, we know that Lucci is not able to like burst me down, so I'm okay with leaving 2, potentially 3 blockers on the board here. So I swing for 7 at face, put some pressure on them, swing for 7 at face again, because Enel is going to be able to put constant pressure on the board. And here I know that they're really going to want to get rid of Enel, and I'm okay with taking life damage here. If I can stay at 1 life, that's really good because I can just Yamato the next turn anyway. So we get hit for 8k here. We get a Shirahoshi, which is really good. We're going to trash a You're the One Who Should Disappear and another Shirahoshi. And then they use a Brook on the Enel, but this effect works when... But the Enel's effect is whenever it would be removed from the field. This works. So even Brook's effect of trashing a card, it still counts as being removed from the field, so I could still activate the Enel power. So now they're in a position where they have to attack my face. Because I already used leader effect, I would have to go down to 0 here if I take this, so I just counter it out with a 2k. I use the Beji because the Flampeys could get me more value in the future. It's something that I could play. Now on this turn, I have an ace. I'm feeling pretty comfortable. I'm going to swing for 7k over 6k because if they decide to protect the Kaku, then I get a 2k out of them, which they then cannot use to. So that instead of a 2k, they are discarding 2 1ks out of that, which is 2 cards out of hand. Really, really good. Because I know with this ace, I'm just going to be able to kill it anyway. Okay, now I have an extra swing with Enel. And here's where I decide, okay, do I attack here, giving them access to another resource, or do I decide to starve them? And I decide to attack them because using this, I'm pretty confident that next turn I can just kill them if they take it, but they counter out of it. So that just exhausts even more resources from their hand anyway, which is even better for us, arguably. The opponent would need 4 swings to kill us. They only have 3 potential swings on board. So they swing for 5k, and I just take that because I don't really care about a 5k swing. They swing for 9k. I'm going to trash a Gadatsu here to heal that last life. They just quit because they only have a Sabo and a Khalifa in hand. They didn't see stage, they didn't really see Arborea, but it was a pretty comfortable victory, I would say. At no point here did I feel really threatened or like there were any issues that I was going to have. I have 17 Dawn worth of stuff on the board in the form of my Enel and Ace, one of which cannot be KO'd with effects or anything for that matter. I can just trash a card instead. I have 4 big bodies in my hand. Any threat, I just know I'm going to be able to remove, so there is no real concern there whatsoever. That being said, I did run into the good tech cards for this matchup. I ran into the Shirahoshi, I ran into the Gadatsu, I ran into the Enel. Those are going to make the matchup easier. And the opponent did not play a Gecko Moria, but I think they exhausted some of their trash a bit early in this situation. But yeah. As you can see, we kind of played it for resources and it all came out good in the end. Final matchup, we have Doflamingo, and as you can see, this opening hand is classic sim shenanigans. It's 4 Edward Weevils and a Mihawk, which I don't like to see. Mulligan that. This is looking quite a bit better. So I will look to Perona here and potentially leader effect next turn. But instead, I see a Weevil in there, which means that pretty soon we will be able to play the Weevil plus Dofi combo. Here, instead, I decide to just swing for 5 twice because I already know what's on the top of my deck, and I have the Jinbei combo coming up next turn. Here I play the Jinbei combo. I decide not to swing. The reason for that is because I don't want to be giving them resources at this point. I don't want to be giving them more cards, especially when there's like already no stage on board. Here, I have 5 life. I just take that, no questions asked. They Tsurumi. They play another Rebecca into a Brook. So this Brook is going to be hard for me to kill, which sucks because they have 2 Rebeccas on board, so they're going to get another turn out of this. So instead, knowing that, I decide the best course of action is going to be to play as many bodies as possible. I play a Doflamingo, there's another Jinbei, and I'm like, okay, that's really nice for me. So I can leader effect, swing at the Brook, bring out the Jinbei, use the Moria, and bring the Edward Weevil into hand. There I was kind of wondering whether I should play the Trafalgar Law and make them bottom deck something from their hand, but that would be bouncing a 4-cost back to my hand, and I just didn't want to do that. I would rather have another body on the board. So both of the Rebekahs are gone now. I will be able to use my swings more effectively, and they play an Isho on us, which trashes the Pudding and trashes the Weevil. But that's okay because we still have counter in our hand, which we can use to protect our board. Again, they can't do anything to me here except with the Brook swing for 4k. They don't have any rushers. There's nothing else that they could possibly do with this turn. So I go, okay, I'm just going to counter out of this using a Doflamingo. I draw a Red Rock, which is really, really nice. I Red Rock the Isho. The important thing I was trying to do here was to keep one of my characters on board, and you'll see why in just a sec. I attack with my Doflamingo. They counter for one. They counter once, and the Jinbei. I attack again. They would need another 2k. They don't have another 2k probably, or else I think they would have protected that. And that's what allows me to get rid of the Brook here, and comfortably play a Kaido, which refills my hand and basically secures the game since I'm at 4 life still. They swing at 8k over the 5k, which is totally fine to me. They don't have the means to remove it, it looks like. And so now I just have a Kaido on the board. So now I decide, okay, I'm going to put as much pressure on them as possible using my leader effect to continue to gain more value. So I leader effect, swing for 7, use the card action. It's only a law, which is not great, but it's a guaranteed body on board, which is nice. And I could always swing it back to hand if I so choose. I use the Boa Hancock to put something on the bottom of the deck. Now I have 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 Dawn worth of stuff. 21 Dawn if you count the Perona, which cannot be removed. Okay, like they can't get rid of all that in one turn. They can get rid of one of the things, but I would be able to stick the other. So it looks like they're going to get rid of my Boa. They use a Gecko, Rebekah, Spandam. They don't need to reduce it using a Helmap Boa, obviously. They draw Khalifa, and they bring out the Brook to kill the Boa, which is fine. They have 1 life now. Here I decide to go for the kill, swing for 8. Okay, so they defend that. They counter out of that, which sucks, but we still have plays, which is really nice. So I go, okay, well, let me use my Perona here, and I'll still have 3 Dawn left. I was thinking, you know, I could have played Edward Weevil to get a 6k on board, plus draw something else, and then still be able to swing for 5. But using the Perona, I'm able to find a Jinbei, which is obviously really good for me. I use that, deploy card, bring out my Edward Weevil, drawing me another card, and the pressure is just too much, and they have to tap out here. Yeah, that's that game. So, as you can see from these games, there's a lot of kind of consideration that you have to do, and knowing these breakpoints of what they're able to remove and what they're not able to remove, looking at their trash. Some of them did not have the best draws, right? But I didn't have the best draws in some of these matchups either. In the RP Law matchup specifically, I had to play that in a very specific way because I didn't have my reducers. I had to kind of walk the line of making sure that my value and my aggression was as locked in as possible, and that's what allowed me to ultimately win the game, even though I didn't play around one possible combo / card, which would have killed me, but it also arguably could have won me the game if I was like making him have it. I think that was actually just a worse play. I don't want to be in a position where you just lose if they have a specific card. So next time I would definitely leave the blocker up. But yeah, this is basically how you want to play against Rob Lucci. Thanks for watching. And again, check me out on Twitter at Hi There Josh. Check me out on Twitch at real_Joshua. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like what you see. Sometimes I'll have someone that I've been watching their videos for a long time, and then like a couple weeks later I realize like, what the heck, I hadn't subscribed. If that's you, click the subscribe button. Also, I have a TCG Player affiliate link, so if you are buying cards, use that link and it helps me out. Anyway, I will see you in the next one. Later.